I was born the year my grandfather died. I was born in March, and my grandfather, Oliver Homealani Kupau, died in August of 1963. Although I have no physical memory of him, I always felt his presence, for he lived in the pictures and stories my grandmother, mother, aunties, and uncles told of him. In wanting to learn more about him, I also learned about myself, and I realized I am a reflection of those who came before me. My grandfather shot 16mm film in Hawaii in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and it is through his films that I see the world through his eyes. This is the story of my grandfather, Oliver Homealani Kupau. But before I begin his story, I need to tell the story of those who came before my grandfather.
The rumor is amongst the family was that Sylvester Cullen, he and his brother and a group of other separatists tried to assassinate Queen Victoria at the time. The attempt failed, and he was shot and wounded, but he escaped. His brother was caught and hung, but he escaped and recovered, and then the family got him on a ship from Ireland to New Orleans because of the Catholic sympathies in New Orleans. And he landed there and made his way to California, which was not a United States possession. And he made it under an assumed name, I think Albert Schaefer. He's supposed to be a German. It was a German passport. So even in those days, they made dummy passports. But that's how he got to Hawaii. And then he bought Waiahole right after the Great Mahele. Sylvester Cullen's dad was Cullen, obviously, from Meath County, Ireland. And his mother was a Hennessy, and he was very proud of that. It's the same Hennessy, the family of Hennessy Cognac, and probably where they got most of their money to allow him to flee Ireland and go to faraway places and acquire farmland. Sylvester Cullen came to Waiahole, and he was already in his late 40s probably, and took up with Mary, who was quite a young girl. She must have been a charmer, and I guess the whole Cullen must have been an adventurer. They started a family and had children, and one of their children was Sarah Cullen.
Sarah Cullen was born in Waiahole in 1874. She was one of 12 children of Sylvester and Mary Cullen. She was known as an excellent horseman and was said to be as good as any man on the ranch at Waiahole. Sarah Cullen was also a woman who had children from several different men.
She is one of the youngest daughters of Mary Holborn, and so I think by that time she didn't have, the discipline and didn't have any guidance as a youthful girl, and did the things she did.
In 1899, Sarah Cullen married Lowell Kupau from Waianae. They had 3 children: Oliver in 1899, Sylvester in 1901, and Florence in 1903. Oliver was sent to Waianae to live with his grandparents, James Kalamahiai Kupau and Kale Kaukeha Na'oho Kupau. Oliver's mother, Sarah Cullen, wrote to him often when he lived in Waianae.
September 6, 1912. My dear son, your letter received and read with love. We are all well, hoping you are the same. I am very glad to know you are getting along with your lessons. Keep on, dear son. Sylvester gave me the $1 you sent me, and I thank you very, very much for it. We'll close with love and best wishes. Good night. Happy dreams. From your loving mother, Sarah Cullen.
Oliver moved from Waianae to Honolulu to attend school. In 1983, my Auntie Elaine recorded a conversation with my grandmother. Oliver Kupau's wife, Jessie. She talked about Oliver's early life.
How come Daddy went to live with his father and stepmother?
Because they were getting paid to have him stay with them so that he could go to St. Louis College, because they lived in Vichay Lane. He went to St. Louis. How many years? I don't know. Then he went to Kamehameha School.
So his grandfather paid for him to go to Kamehameha?
Yeah.
And that's how he went to Kamehameha?
That's right.
Oliver began his studies at Kamehameha schools in 1913. His father, Loa Kupau, graduated from Kamehameha in 1896. While at Kamehameha schools, Oliver received many letters from his family. They were often filled with great love for him.
Windward Oʻahu, February 2nd, 1915. I ku'u mo'opuna aloha, Oliva L. Kupau. E hoʻikaika ʻoe I ka naʻauao I loaʻa ia kākou, ka palekana me ka pule nui I ke akua, a nana no e kokua ia kākou wa pau I loko o kona aloha. No ke aloha nui, nā ke akua e kia I mai, ke aloha nui, ko kuku Kalihi. To my beloved grandchild, Oliver L. Kupau, strengthen your studies and intellect so that we will have protection, and pray dearly to the Akua. He will be the one to help us all in his aloha. For you is the aloha. The Akua will guide us with aloha. Your tutu Kalihi. Waiʻanae Oʻahu, October 6, 1916. I kuʻu moʻopuna aloha, Oliva L. Kupau. Ke kauoha nei au ia oe, e apo aku oe I na hana pau, e haʻawi ia mai ana ia oe. Mai haʻalele aku, no ka mea, ina o ke akua alakaʻi ana ia oe, e loa ana no ka pōmaikaʻi ia oe, oia kaʻu kauoha ia oe. Me ke aloha nui, o au no, ko kuku, Kalihi Kupau. To my beloved grandchild, Mr. Oliver L. Kupau, grasp the task that will be given to you. Leave nothing unattended. For if Ke Akua is the one leading you, you will surely have good fortune. This is my command to you. With great aloha, I remain your kuku, Kalihi Kupau.
At Kamehameha, my grandfather took part in the military cadet training and the athletic programs that the school offered. In 1918, my grandfather graduated from Kamehameha. My grandfather lived through a time of tremendous change in Hawaii. The Hawaiian nation was illegally overthrown in 1893. Hawaii was annexed by the United States in 1898, a year before his birth in 1899, and he, I believe like probably many Hawaiians, was trying to find his way through the enormous cultural, political, social, and economic changes taking place around him.
They had to navigate their way between two cultures, their homeland and their mother culture, and then an introduced or culture forced on them. And some of them did it well and some didn't. And I think sometimes when I see people who have done well, they've usually had a very good grasp of the American culture or the Western culture and or the Hawaiian culture.
I believe from an early age, my grandfather strived to create a balance for himself between the Hawaiian culture and Western ways, to adapt to a new culture, but to not forget his own. The day after my grandfather graduated from Kamehameha, he began work at the U.S. Navy Yard at Pearl Harbor for $2.32 per day. From that day until the day he died, he logged every penny he made and every penny he spent. In 1918, Oliver became a member of the 4th Hawaiian Provisional Battalion. In 1924, Oliver Kupau meets a young woman on the bus named Jessie Robb from Aiea.
I asked Daddy, I said, how did you meet Mother? And he laughed and he said, well, I'll tell you how we met. He said, we rode the same bus every day to work, and she kept her nose stuck in a book.
I always had a book that I was reading. Anybody came by and said hello, I wouldn't even look at them.
He said, it took me a year before she'd say hello. And so I thought, well, I want to get Mother's version. I said, hey, Mom, Dad said that it took him a year riding on the same bus with you before you'd say hello. And he said, you always had your nose stuck in a book. She said, yes, I didn't want to be bothered. And that's how they met.
When she was going with him, with my dad, he said, oh, I'll pay for you for the bus, Jess. I don't know if that was a nickel or what it was, and she says, I'll pay my own way. Nobody pays my way. I will pay my own. So they used to get on the bus and she would pay her own because she refused to have him pay for her.
In 1925, Oliver and Jessie are married. Oliver and Jessie would have 13 children together, 11 of their own and 2 Hanai children, meaning, in the Hawaiian style, adopted. It is here that I truly begin to learn about who and what type of man my grandfather was. I learned it through the stories of my family members and others who knew him. And I also begin to learn about him through the film and photos he shot. I see the world through his eyes. Through the lens of the camera, I see the things that were important to him.
Well, I didn't see much of my dad growing up because he was gone an awful lot, trying to make a living for us kids, which he did. He was a bread earner, you know, and he had all of us kids to feed. My father was hardly ever home. He was gone most of our life because he was in the military. And then when he worked at Pearl Harbor, he came home every day from work. And then the weekends, it was always at the shooting range, or he was going to some dinner, or he was speaking at some place. You know, because he was gone so much, our life with our father is very limited. To me, it was very limited. But it was the quality of time, you know, growing up that we spent with our father, that's most, you know, important.
My dad would be, in the traditional terms, the man of the family who went out and made the living for the family, took care of the family. My mom ruled the roost at home.
He attended to his work and the house was mine to take care of.
Because he was away so often in the military, she always used to say even that it was her role to take care of things at home and to take care of the problems and not to bother him on his job, or not to call him at work, or not for him to know what was going on. So in many ways, sometimes when there might have been disagreements or things that happen amongst people in the family, or as kids, just fights, these are things that he would never have known about, because Mom felt that it wasn't something that he should know about, because he had more important things to do, which was to take care of the family.
The Kupau family home was in Kalihi on Rose Street. Kalihi today looks much different from what it once looked like for the family.
The area that we live, in fact, the whole Kalihi area was that much on one side.
My Uncle Clarence took me on a ride through Kalihi to share with me his memories.
What year was this, Uncle Clarence?
Oh, back in 1930.
So you're just a young boy.
Yeah, young boy. On this side, on the left side, it's all taro patches. You know, from here down to the stream. On the Makai side of this, all taro. On this side here, no house on this corner here. Down here, there's 1 or 2 houses. Now I'll show you where the. You see this little shack here on the left, and the little shack. That used to be the Chinese store, and it's still standing there. Still, it's the Chinese.
What did they sell there?
Everything. They sell everything for the people. Old pie, you know, cigarettes, smoke, and food, canned food, or whatever. Nothing else was here. Nothing else. So this store is still standing there. Look. You see that house next door?
Yeah.
That's where your great grandmother used to live.
Really?
Yeah, back there. Yeah. Oh, you see here? You see this mango tree? That's what I'm looking for. You see this mango tree? There used to be the house here. That's where your grandmother lived, right here. That's the first house she lived before she moved to the old house. Okay, that concludes the program, yeah?
The old house Uncle Clarence talks about is what we call the Big House. It was located at 2424 Rose Street.
I understand I was born in that house. I wasn't born in a hospital like everyone now. I was born in that house. And I understand the day I was born, my mother was hanging clothes out in the backyard. They used to say, well, that's why I'm always tired, because she was working right up until she gave birth.
The Kupau family was growing at the Rose Street house. My grandfather had joined the National Guard in 1921 and was part of the 298th Division. This provided him the means to support the family, but with such a large family, 13 children, he looked for other ways to increase his income.
He bought this property on Middle Street. My grandmother lived on Middle Street, which he bought that property where I stayed with my grandma. And next door was this huge flower garden. So he bought all that property there, and then he brought these houses up from John Rogers Airport. They called John Rogers Airport that time, Watertown. And everybody was saying, oh, look at the colonel's buying those old houses, you know. Oh, junky. He put them in our yard on Rose Street, and my brothers and ourselves, we had to, you know, take out nails and help and paint and stuff like that. And he rented them out, and he had, you know, income coming in. And he said, so it was for us later on for our education. When he was renting them, some people would not pay him. So he would go over and he would say, away. He says, you guys have beer today. He said, you know, you haven't paid me rent for a little while. So how about you fellas, instead of buying a case of beer, how about you taking that money and give it to me? He said, at least I know you're making some kind of payment every month, because he said, you know, I have a big family to feed. And just the way he spoke made them feel like a fool. And they said, okay, Colonel. And they always took care of their bills for my dad. But my dad said, you know, if you're way behind in something, if you just pay a little bit on your bill every month. My father was satisfied because he said, you're making an attempt to pay me back. Growing up was not easy for him, and money was hard. He was a very, very conservative man, especially where money was concerned.
He had this big iron safe in his room where he just kept important papers and stuff, and then he had silver dollars, and whenever it was one of our birthdays, he'd open his safe. So if you're 8 years old, he'd take out 8 silver dollars, and he's, okay, this is for you for your birthday, and he'd put them in your hand. And after you hold them for a little while, he says, okay, back in the safe they go. And then the next time somebody else's birthday can be 10, 12, or whatever, he'd take out 10 or 12 and, okay, this is for your birthday. And then you hold them for a few minutes, and back in the safe, you know, goes these silver dollars. And that I can remember, he always had these silver dollars that he used to bring out and give us for our birthday, but then he'd take them back and put them back in the safe. So I don't know whatever happened to them all after that.
I bet they're all the same silver dollars.
I think so. I think so.
I can see him standing in the kitchen slicing his oranges, because he always used to love to eat oranges. And I would say, Miley, I know, Dad, it's not what you make that counts. It's how much you put away. And then it's not how much you put away that counts, but how you invest it. And then it's not how much you invested that counts, but how much you give back to other people. And that's truly what he did.
My neighbor over there, he worked under my father, and he was telling me what a great man he was, and that how he told him how to save money. And he said, because of my father, he owns lots of property, he has money in the bank, and he still saves a portion of whatever he gets every month, he puts in the bank to save.
In my grandfather's papers from Kamehameha schools, I found this pamphlet on finances.
Work and earn, make a budget, keep a record of expenditures, have a bank account, carry life insurance, make a will, own your own home, pay your bills promptly, invest in government securities, share with others.
The home on Rose Street was always open to others.
The big house in Kalihi was everybody's house. Everybody's friends came there. Some of your uncle's friends came and they never left. They lived there. And Grandma and Grandpa always felt that the home was open to anybody, and you never ever argue or bicker about food. When you have food, food is for everybody. Doesn't matter who came, you have enough.
Stew was famous. And stew, you can make all different types. That's a food there. Either you eat it, I eat it, I'm hungry.
You know, it was a very nice home. I mean, it was an old-fashioned home and big enough for us to play hide and seek in. And we used to do that a lot. Of course, old Walter Kupau, you know, he was always the hardest guy to catch.
The big house also received many visitors.
Well, I remember friends like the Kanaheles. They used to stop by and visit my dad.
Colonel Kanahele served with my grandfather in the famed Hawaii's own 298th Regiment.
If you ever saw them as a group or drilling, I mean, they were just so impressive. There was Kupau, there was my dad, there was Kepler, there was Keala. They're just, you know, these are just a few of the names that I happen to remember, but there were so many of them. They were so admired, and that may be partly because of who the members of the 298th were, but they had such prestige and esteem in the community. If you said you were a member of the 298th Infantry, I mean, it was a wonderful compliment to you. Oh my goodness, you know, people just really were impressed by that.
There were your fathers, your brothers, your cousins, and certainly they had come from their communities and intermingled with our families, and they became exactly that, part of our family. And the support from the community was exactly the same way. They were ohana.
There was an unwritten code of professionalism in the 298th. They were all marksmen. They were all militarily trained to the letter. And they had such admiration for the work that they were doing. And they really felt like they were the guardians of Hawaii. Colonel Kupau, Colonel Kanahele, who was my dad, and Colonel Keala, they had a wonderful inner camaraderie. They saw each other a great deal. They did things together, very, very supportive of each other, and they admired each other. They were all bright, well-educated men, and they analyzed things in such a way they never lost their Hawaiianness, and they never lost their military discipline. They were able to combine the two and perhaps make them work better than they might have in any other situation. Their military performance was better because of their Hawaiianness. And their Hawaiianness was perhaps better because they were militarily trained. I don't think that in all the time that I knew, and I knew the men of the 298th Infantry, I never ever saw them lose their decorum. Even when they disagreed, they were always extremely polite. And once again, I do feel that that was this unique blend of their Hawaiian culture and the military profession. We are the beneficiaries of this type of leadership, and we should be trying to emulate the same things that they practiced in their lives.
And people like Colonel Kupau, Colonel Kapea, Colonel Simonson, Colonel Kanehele, they left something for those of us that now find ourselves in senior positions to look up to maintain that kind of an image for those that are to follow us. And so it's very important that I fulfill that responsibility as they did.
One thing I always noticed about them is that they were very cognizant of their enlisted men, of the men that were under them. If the men under them were improved themselves in all ways, militarily, educationally, and so forth, if they improved themselves, then the whole body of the 298th would be enhanced by that.
I believe the military life provided a place for many Hawaiians like my grandfather to find structure for their lives in a chaotic time in Hawaii's history. And I also believe the Hawaiian warrior spirit these men possessed was passed down to them from our ancestors as a form of cultural DNA. These men, no matter what period of time in history, would have been Hawaiian warriors. My grandfather gave a speech in 1955 to the Honolulu Armory. These are his words.
I had 38 years of military training as a student at Kamehameha, in the Army, and with the National Guard of Hawaii. Even today, I devote a great deal of my spare time to developing marksmanship as a necessary military skill as well as a demanding sport. As I think back over those years, I recall, both as an old soldier and as a proud father. I have 4 sons in uniform, and there is no father prouder of his sons than I am of my boys. The rules for success in the service are few and simple. Dress sharp, look sharp, be sharp. Success in combat depends on teamwork, working together. So do your full share and a little more. The habit of making your squad the best in the company, your regiment the best in the division, those habits will help you get most out of the people you're with when you return to civilian life. Look after your equipment. If you are a rifleman, the condition of your rifle and your ability to use it may someday be a difference between life and death, victory or defeat. Study. Save your money. It is up to you to follow habits of thrift and budget your income to provide for your future. Above all, remember, from now on, you are a man among men, responsible for your acts and failures. May God be with you always. Mahalo.
During World War II, my grandfather was stationed at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, training and preparing the men of the 298th for battle. Nef Maiava served in the 298th under my grandfather's leadership in 1942.
It was great to be to serve under his command, yeah, and all the boys, we all loved him, yeah. But we respected him a lot because every time and then he would stand on the jeep and he would talk. Well, he says that to everybody to be strong and and if we're going into war and stuff like that, we'll be representing the islands. The only funny part about that, the Hauʻula kids can't understand him. He talking broken English, I talking half Hawaiian, and but all us guys blalas we understand, yeah. And then then some of the older, what did he say? I said just no talk till everything is done, yeah. But it's hard to explain to them because we are in Hawaii we're pidgin English talking, yeah. And I thought that even in overseas in war zones and stuff, everything is said in pidgin English, and the enemy would not know, what we're talking about, yeah. And everybody loves him, yeah. And actually, they die for him, because he was a good leader. And that's what I think of him, and I respect him in that effort.
Manfred Sen also served in the 298th under my grandfather.
Schofield, when I was assigned to 298, that's when I saw him. I remember when we stand to attention. That's when I was first time I met Kupau. You see, because we all have to, he has to see us too. And I was surprised because we're green. I was only 20 years old. The company is all mixed. Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, and Hawaiians, and Portuguese. Then we managed to see Kupau. Again, when the company all got together, standing in line, see, march before him, and the colonel, see. We feel close because at least the local boy is leading us, which is all right, see. And you feel safe when you have local boys directing.
His haircut says it all. He always had that haircut all his life, the military haircut. But that's the way Oliver dressed. He was always ramrod, neat and straight.
In those days, I had to help with the laundry because I was the oldest. And we starched everything. Everything was starched. So I learned to iron. And I had to iron, my mother taught me how to iron my father's uniform. And in the front, you had that straight line right down the center. And if it wasn't down the center, it had to be done over until that line was straight.
Heavens, we even ironed his underwear, He didn't have a T-shirt or underwear that wasn't unironed because we knew we had to have it ironed and hanging on the door outside the shower before 5 o'clock. Dad's coming home at 5. He's going to take a shower. You have to have his underwear there. And I can remember sometimes it wouldn't. And he'd stand by you and say, Miley, do you think you could iron this? And he'd have this big smile. And then you feel terrible because you should have had it ironed in the first place. I mean, who the hell else irons underwear? But Grandpa had ironed underwear. Your grandma wouldn't have it any other way.
The military life definitely suited my grandfather, but I often wonder what it must have been like for my grandmother, who had to do most of the daily work with the family by herself. Every year my grandfather went away in the summer to Camp Perry, and she was left home with all the kids.
I came across Mother's diary. I don't know how or if it was on the dresser or something. She said she was sitting down on the stairs and at the back of the Kalihi house on Rose Street. And she said, that Daddy was far away, that he was, in Georgia, and that here she was with the children, and how lonely she was for him. And that touched me, because you don't think of your parents as having romantic feelings or nostalgia or whatever, because I don't know what you think they are when you're little, like they're superhuman or, are void of any sentimentality or what. But that always kind of, it touched me.
I would say, and I don't think anyone could think differently, there was always a constant tug of war between Grandma and Grandpa over shooting. Because actually, shooting, going to the range, was really the love of his life. and he was there all the time. And I can hear Grandma sometimes say, if I could take those rifles and break them, because they were in the middle bedroom closet, they were locked. The pistols, one of the joys was to see your grandpa sit down and clean those pistols every weekend when he came back, to clean the pistols out. And it was just an art to watch him. And they went back into a box that was locked, and they went back into the middle bedroom closet that was also locked with a big key.
He used to lay down with his rifle, you know, and shoot toward the middle street from, you know, from the lanai. He would lay down and just dry shoot by the hours. He'd shoot that, like he's shooting that target. Somebody said, hey, a good thing you're not a burglar, Ellie. And I said, why? He said, if you were a burglar and ran around your house, your father would close his eyes and bang, you got it. He said, that's how good a crack shot your father was.
He set up the Schofield Barracks shooting range. He set up the police pistol range up at Hawaii area. He would spend hours just lying in the grass with his gun and dry shooting. My mother used to holler, Oliver, get up from that grass and come inside and eat your dinner. And he said, I'm coming. In another half hour, he would be popping in.
He would have been a general had he not been, quotes, Hawaiian, or had he not had a Hawaiian name like Kupau. And I don't remember the details of it, but I do remember that it was said any number of times, and Grandma said it. He never spoke of it, but she spoke of his not being promoted up to being a general.
We went through the back gate, the patch gate at Fort Shafter. We drove right through. I didn't even notice anything about it. And guy didn't salute. Grandpa's car had the officer stickers on it. Guy didn't salute. Grandpa pulled over right past that gate, got out of the car, and I think Uncle Dickie was in the car too. And they went off on that soldier. When we left, the guy was saluting on fire hydrant. And when we came back and left the gate, he was still saluting a fire hydrant.
It was clear when going through my grandfather's papers that his Hawaiian culture was very important to him. It was there in the articles and letters he kept, and in the actions he took to make sure the school he attended and loved, and where he sent his children, would remain only for Hawaiian children. In 1931, there was a movement to allow non-Hawaiians into Kamehameha schools. This, along with Flora Hayes, Elizabeth Kawaha, and Roger Whitmarsh of the Kamehameha Alumni Association, was my grandfather's response.
March 31, 1931. Whereas it has been reported that the trustees of the estate of Bernice Pauahi Bishop, founder of Kamehameha Schools, intend to admit to said schools in the future persons not of Hawaiian descent. Whereas it is the belief of the alumni of Kamehameha Schools that the purpose of said donor in founding and endowing said schools was primarily to provide for the education of persons of Hawaiian descent. And whereas, even at the present time, it is impossible for said schools to accommodate all of the children of Hawaiian descent who apply for or are desirous of entry into said schools. Whereas there is no necessity by reason of lack of applications of Hawaiian descent for entry into said schools for admission of persons other than those of Hawaiian descent. Now therefore be it resolved by the alumni of Kamehameha Schools that they do hereby earnestly protest against the admission by said trustees of any persons other than those of Hawaiian descent to said schools, and be it further resolved that said trustees are hereby urgently and humbly requested not to admit to said schools persons other than those of Hawaiian descent. Kamehameha Alumni Association, Oliver Kupau, President.
My grandfather spoke Hawaiian fluently, but he never spoke the language to his children.
As a child, I can remember us going down to Hauʻula, and on the way we'd stop at the Punaluu Beach Park, because there was Mr. Ka'apu and his malo, his red malo, and we would laugh and laugh in the back car because Dad would have to stop. Grandma would say, oh no, because it's going to be like forever. And the two of them would be rattling off in Hawaiian. And we would be in the back seat going kamaka waka waka waka, you know, mimicking Hawaiian and not speaking it, of course, at all. He spoke it fluently.
He never spoke Hawaiian to us, though. Only outside if he used to tell us to come and eat, we knew that. You know, Heli Mai, whatever. But we knew that, but he never talked Hawaiian to us.
My father and my uncle, Walter Larson, they never spoke English when they were in. They always spoke Hawaiian. And it's so beautiful to hear. But at that time, it was forbidden for us to speak Hawaiian in the house. You didn't question it at all. You didn't. We were not allowed to speak Hawaiian at all. It was totally forbidden.
My grandfather was very close to his sister Violet. Violet was raised by Tutulike, who was once a dancer in Kalakawa's court. My grandfather would visit her at her home at Laie Malo'o.
Oh, my Auntie Violet was a wonderful person. She spoke fluent Hawaiian. She tilled the taro patches where she lived.
Sonny and Dookie, Auntie Violet's sons, take me back to where their old home once stood.
I remember cooking the taro. I remember Tutu even helping with the taro back there. Yeah, and you know, after we pull the taro, we clean the taro out, put it in a drum, light the fire, wait till when Mom said was cooked, we go over there clean the taro. Now I remember Uncle Oliver from the National Guard summer camp. We get we were at summer camp, and Eagle and I would get on a Jeep with him and come home because you have to take a shower. Everybody take a shower in the summer camp. Well, we come home with Uncle Oliver.
Take shots.
Take good shower, nice and clean, and then go back with him. Nobody else could do that, only us can. Yeah.
And when you talk to people that knew him, Colonel Kupau, you know, wow, you know him. that was a big deal knowing Uncle. Say, one time I see him, he's driving in with a big Mercury. Yeah. And then kids go play. And they go in the house. And that was it.
I wonder what the conversations must have been about when my grandfather and Auntie Violet sat in her kitchen and spoke in Hawaiian. Oliver was also very close to his brother, Walter Larson. Throughout both their lives, Oliver and Walter made sure to take care of their mother, Sarah Cullen.
She's lucky she had a few good children who were able to give back to her and make her life, you know, all is well that ends well. And so I'm sure she got to see, you know, her son, at least her son Walter and her son Oliver, doing pretty well in life. The closeness of both Oliver and Walter was the fact that they both loved their mother dearly and did turn around to help her, you know.
As for Jessie Kupau, she seemed to have a handle on things with her children.
Grandma was the enforcer. She was the godmother. What she said goes. And Grandpa, he pretty much went along for the ride, and it wasn't a big deal. What he said, we respected also.
Grandma was the one you feared because she had that cord. I seen that cord when I was little. I seen the iron and I seen the cord. In fact, no, we were in high school and we found that thing in a back closet in the back room. I told Alan, I said, man, can you imagine getting licking with this thing? He goes, no.
And nobody ever talked back to her either, you know. That was against the law, law of the house.
Grandma would cuss out everybody equally. Grandma was the GDSOB Kanaka, GDSOB Haole, GDSOB Japanese, GDSOB Pake. So one day she was going off, and this was after Grandma was real ill, and she said, God damn Haole, no good, rotten Haole, blah, 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 blah. I said, Grandma, why you keep saying stuff like that about the Haoles? You Haole too. She said, what, they gotta be, I told her, there gotta be some good ones. She said, yeah, there used to be some good ones, but they all died. I'm the last one. You ask her about good Hawaiians, there was only one good one. She married that one. The rest of them are all bums. Grandma was definitely a trip. And she'd be cussing out kids over there, and then she'd kick back and go, wait a minute, no, those are my grandchildren. So she'd pick on somebody else.
I think Mother hated the thought that the Hawaiians were so taken advantage of that infuriated her. So, you know, instead of saying, you know, how sad this is, you know, she said, those damn dumb Kanakas. So I think it was, that was why, you know, she would say that. She would put them down more out of anger because They gave away everything. And of course, there were always hands willing to receive.
As I watch the film my grandfather shot, I feel privileged to see the world through his eyes. I feel connected to him.
And everywhere we used to go, he used to pack his movie camera because he was always taking pictures. I know before Christmas, when Nuanu had all the poinsettias in bloom, we used to go up there and have to stand in front of poinsettias to get our pictures taken.
Oh, heavens, yes. I remember Daddy with his movie camera because it was always parades, anything military. He loved the military.
And then he always used to graft hibiscus in our yard. So he was always taking pictures of the hibiscus he had in his movie camera.
We'd get in a car with Grandma and all of us, and we'd be going down the road. And all of a sudden, he would pull off on the side because there would be some beautiful hibiscus flowers. And he always had his camera with him. And he would stop and he would just take a picture of that hibiscus. Or he would have Auntie Puahi or myself, if we weren't fighting over something, he would have us hold the hibiscus while he took that picture.
He'd just take the camera along. It was in a case. It was in a leather case. And then, well, wherever he decided to stop, he'd, get out and take pictures. We used to go up by Punahou because certain time of the year, all the night blooming cereals would be in bloom.
Grandpa was a silent person. Grandpa spoke through his behavior. He didn't have to say any words. You knew. When he stopped, to take the picture of that flower, you didn't have to know. You just knew. I mean, he didn't have to talk. He didn't have to lose a lot of words. You just knew it was something that he loved. In the last, basically, year or so of his life, he had hundreds and hundreds of hours of sick leave. And Grandma wanted him to take sick leave. She wanted him to use the time that was given to him that he could take, or leave of absence, whatever. And he wouldn't. And I can remember Grandma saying, too, that even towards the very end, when he really was very ill, but he would not go to the doctor because he knew they would hospitalize him. He couldn't bend over to tie his shoes, and Grandma tied his shoes for him. And the reason was, I can remember him saying any number of times that people always thought the Hawaiians were a lazy people. But they were not. They were very hard-working people. And he felt that whatever he could do by his doing, not his talking, would be proof that he was not unlike so many Hawaiians that he knew that were hardworking.
My grandfather died on August 12, 1963, 6 months after I was born. While going through his papers, I came across a speech he had saved given by Reverend Akaka at Kauai Hall Church in April of 1963. It reads,
"We Hawaiian people must be careful not to get lost in a maze of trivial goals and activities. Our time and our life are wasted if we run after things that really do not matter. We cannot be people who just wait and hope for a best that never materializes. We must try, by faith, to take hold of life and discipline our lives to high purpose."
I miss my father for the simple reason I could use his counsel. In fact, even right now, I could use his advice. And that's what I miss the most.
Grandma gave me the hat. You know, my wife always say, you know, are you ready for the hat? I don't know yet. One of these days, like I said. You know, we all get challenges in life, and when we can overcome those challenges and be where we are today in life, I think Grandpa and my dad and Grandma and everybody, they would be proud of us. Yeah.
There's a part of Dad that you never could reach, and I think that was something that he also offered as a lesson for everybody, and that is that you never reveal everything about yourself. The lady at the store always had a bill that you signed for things in those days. One day when I went there to do the charging, she said something about your dad needs to pay the bill. It was $90. And when I came home to tell him that, he was so offended because he responsibly took care of all of the bills that were due. And he said, Miley, I want you to pay the bill and not go back there again. You don't have to tell her why. You don't have to say a word. She will always wonder why we haven't returned. And there was a huge lesson there. In his silence, because basically in many ways he spoke without words, in his silence he had a command and a power and a way with people that you knew him, but then you didn't quite. And I think all of us can never really say we truly knew him totally. And I think that's the core of him. And I would hope the same as his daughter, that no one would ever really know me totally, or that for my children, that they would always keep a sense of themselves that was truly theirs. And in that silence, they controlled their life. Because in his silence, he had major impact on so many people. And they never could put their finger on what it was. They just knew. And that is the legacy that he's left.
My grandfather has shown me a path to follow. It is a path we all can follow. It is our choice. I believe now we are all tied to our ancestors, and we are all a reflection of those who came before us.
To live in true harmony and peace with all whom we come in contact with is truly a blessing from heaven. Let us go forth on the path of life, always keeping these virtues in mind, so we can honestly say we have done our share in promoting peace and harmony throughout the world.
Good night.